Welcome back to Crown's Crypto Cave, and welcome to this next entry within the psychological series. Today, a very important topic, a very sexy topic, and that is the time to go 100x leverage. But it's not on any sort of trade. It's on your emotions, your emotional state. So we as humans, it feels like these all start off like that, but we as humans are, in a sense, emotional creatures where our emotions are set up to direct us towards certain goals, right? You feel bad when you are typically not on some path towards your ultimate goal, whatever that might be. This applies for just about anything, but in the context of trading, typically this comes in some way along the side of, I want to make money. Whenever I don't make money, I feel bad, and there's your bad emotional response. But just having that emotional response is not in and of itself an end, right? Or a means to an end, really. It's a means to an end is what it is, but it's not an end in and of itself. That's the problem with it, and where most people get lost in this whole equation. Most people will feel the bad emotion and then back away from it because we're taught, especially in the Western world, we're kind of conditioned from birth, and especially like through school and probably your parents as well in some sense, where like when you do something bad, when you have a bad result, perhaps typically in the context of school, then you're told, you're bad, you're a failure, you need to back off, and that typically causes people to shut down. The problem is that's not that obviously doesn't help changing at all. It doesn't help the situation at all whatsoever. You're never going to get better at anything if you don't get the iterations in it. So when we're kind of conditioned that way, it makes positive change extremely difficult, and that's why the traditional school system, I think, is really flawed in some ways. You're taught, failing is never okay, whereas I've found the most lessons in all my failures. Really, I've certainly learned the most from them, and it comes back to this topic of emotional leverage, because in those failures, while I did feel absolutely terrible, what brought it full circle was that was a clear and obvious signal that what I was doing was not getting me towards my ultimate goal, whatever that was. Again, in the context of trading, typically going to be some sort of a P&L, typically going to be some sort of P&L profit and loss calculation. And I can tell you from my experience that, and I've been and I've talked about this a lot, so I don't want to bore people with the details of this, but I've gone broke before, quite literally to $0 in my bank account. And while at the time it was the most emotionally devastating experience of my life, keywords, emotionally devastating experience, it's what precipitated and allowed the best change I've ever made in my life after that. And that was, it showed me that I never want to be in that mind state ever again. To just use a small example, I always remember this, going to the grocery store and trying to buy ground beef, which is literally like $3 or $4. It's not expensive. It's really, really cheap. And the cashier says, "Hello, sir. Your credit card seems to not be working. Do you have another one?" I'm like, no, I'm actually a loser and I don't have any money. Is what I wanted to say, but what it showed up on the expression on my face was probably about to cry, really, as that was the clear and obvious signal that what I was doing was not working, obviously, right? So once you have those sorts of emotional experiences, most people will stop there and they won't change. And what they actually end up doing is they'll do what's called like blind spotting it. They'll kind of block it out, continue along their life, and obviously you're not going to make any change if you quite literally just disregard the facts. That's not what you want to do here. Of course, if you're tuning into content like this, you're probably the kind of person who's at the very least self-aware that that's not going to help you in any sort of way. You can blind spot it out, maybe not feel as bad, not have those bad feelings, but do you get to go where you want to go? No. So it's better to set up our emotional response in the direction of our ultimate goals rather than just trying to feel good all the time, which is why I always push back when people say, "Hey, Crown, you seem like a very positive person." It's like, no, I'm not positive. I'm not positive at all. It's just, this is default, man. It's like life's pretty much for the most part good. It's for the most part, everything's all good. It's fucking amazing world. We live in a world of opportunities. Holy shit. It's like the best time to live ever. But it doesn't take away from the fact that there's serious perils in the world as well. Absolutely. It's just you want to be geared towards the opportunity, not the devastation, worst case scenarios. Those can be motivating factors, absolutely. That's what these emotional response can give us, but only if you leverage it in the direction of where you want to go. So now let's get on to the resolution of this rant. We've described the problem. We described the problem at, well, not necessarily the problem, but just a situation where, you go through a devastating situation, you have a strong emotional response, and that emotional response is what precipitates actual, real, potentially positive change. The positive change part, however, is where the actual work gets to be done. So the difference between like a novice trader or an intermediate trader, kind of seasoned a little bit, and then like an advanced trader who's profitable over a long period of time, is the fact that when they feel those potential bad emotions, they look into what the cause of it is and what kind of changes can be made upon it. Whereas the novice person essentially takes on a negative emotional state and is completely dissuaded from ever trying again, which is never going to work. And that's one of the big problems with our modern education system is like, if you fail a test, you're basically what's it called? Put back, right? You're basically put back and put off and discouraged. That's the word that I'm looking for. Discouraged from ever, going towards it again. It's almost like you take the test once and they say, sorry, sir, you failed. And now you have to do and now you go down this route. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't help. Like you need to be able to fail in order to do anything worthwhile. So I certainly disagree with the way that that's kind of handled in the school system, and it kind of creates people who, will try something until they have their first like legitimate failure, and then of course they just walk away. Well, in this endeavor, you're going to have your trials and tribulations, but those are needed. Those are needed in order to burn into your soul what is right going forwards. That's the key. And you can do this, 1,000 times over. For myself, I hope that I don't have to go broke again. Maybe it may, maybe I do. I certainly have more lessons to learn, just not, in life in general. And you can bet that those are going to be accompanied by some pretty strong emotional emotional situations. But hey, that is the key, and what you can really learn from this game is that those can be extremely positive things if you let them be, if you put the work into it. But that comes up to the next situation, the actual resolution to this rant, as I keep on getting to it, but then go backwards. But the actual resolution of the rant, and I'll give my own example for this one. Again, going broke myself, that was an extremely, extremely, extremely devastating experience. The strongest emotions that I've ever felt. That's just so awful, so damn awful. It's honestly hard to think about it. But once you get into that emotional state, that's the time to recognize that your emotions are telling you that you're not on track with where you want to go. An obvious signal, assuming that you're a well-conditioned human being, which for the most part, if you're tuning into a content like this, you probably are. Once you have that, that's the signal. That's the signal to step back and now reflect, meditate on the situation. What is going on? For myself, in that prior situation, it had to do with risk management. I thought that I was better than the market because I knew technical analysis, and I learned it, from some of the best people literally in the world. And I thought that made me invaluable. No, not so. Of course. I mean, even my mentors, they took losses themselves. I saw them take losses every day, quite literally every day. But they could take those losses because they had the experiences that they were making a lot more money in other places, right? Anyways, different conversation for another time. But for myself, that was a time to step back and reflect and dial in exactly what needed to change for myself in order to make this a successful endeavor. Of course, you're always learning, so I don't want to make it sound like I'm done with anything like that. I'm certainly not, but I would say that, that key experience has now given me the tools to always go back and reflect anytime that I feel those initial bad feelings to begin with, so I can stop it perhaps a little bit sooner, hopefully sooner. That's the idea, in the situation. And for myself, that really meant not just meditating on the fact that risk management was necessary, but also meditating on what actually, what I want my principles to be, what the key goals that I wanted to work towards were, and what was necessary in order to make those goals a reality. And because I had that strong emotional response, now I had an extremely strong why, an extremely strong negative scenario to run away from. Really, is what happened. I knew where I didn't want to be because holy shit, man, that is perhaps like I said, the worst experience in my life. So once you know where you don't want to be, now you can start to, anytime that you feel those negative emotions, you can kind of deduce that you're headed in that direction, right? So with that experience, I was able to not only create the emotional leverage to follow my own plan, but to create my own plan in the first place. And then I got the toolbox to go forwards with other skills in my life and other endeavors. And also whenever I have more trials and tribulations with trading, I can go back and go through that same sort of process and apply that. And that's why I love trading. It's a massive, massive, massive allegory for the rest of my life, and probably yours as well. A lot of this, a lot of this stuff just carries on over into all skills, because the way that you do one thing is the way that you do all things. The way that you learn one thing is the way that is the way that you likely learn all things as well. So this is perhaps one of the strongest things that actually makes change possible. That emotional response letting you know that you're not where you want to be and something now needs to actually change. And because you know how bad it feels to be where you don't want to be, that is the driving force, that initial motivating factor towards making the positive change, but also really holding true to the changes that you're going to make. Because it needs to keep up typically for about I believe studies show about 3 weeks is when you can really cement in a new habit, a new emotional response essentially. So it takes time, but with that initial conditioning and that initial shock that you have, that is what makes that possible. It kind of like kicks you out and gives you almost a psychedelic experience in a sense, because you're kicked out of your day-to-day just thought processes, which are mostly the same, assuming that they're not acted upon by an outside force and forcibly changed. But now you actually have something to go off of. So that's where this all comes back to. So I'll wrap up the video now. Extremely negative situations are powerful and potentially positively life-changing for yourself. Especially for myself, I can adhere to that, and I likely think that it'd benefit you as well. It gives you the emotional leverage that you can now know where you don't want to be, and if you want to go where you want to be, then you now have the burning desire in the burning of that lesson into your soul, that if you don't follow these new laws that you set up for yourself, you will end up back in the hell pit of the abyss, essentially is what I like to call it. And as long as the emotional response is strong enough, you will have enough leverage to make that change. But the work has to be done at the same time. So once you feel that, that's a time to actually not do any more immediately with the skill that you're practicing, but to dial it back, reflect, and come up with an actual plan that you can follow now. So with that said, I'll wrap up this video. Look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care.